Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down Dr. Jim Spiegel's absolutely fascinating lecture on the philosophy of miracles. We're going to examine exactly how philosophical inquiry handles the seemingly impossible, looking really closely at the clash between religious claims and skeptical philosophy.
So have you ever actually stopped to wonder, from a purely philosophical standpoint, is it intellectually justifiable to believe in the miraculous? Naturalists often argue that miracles are either literally impossible or that we're never rationally justified in believing they've occurred. But as we'll see, the logic on both sides of this debate is a lot more intricate than it looks on the surface.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. Defining the miraculous, 2. Contingency versus violation, 3. Hume's hard objection, 4. Hume's soft objection, 5. Probability versus evidence, and finally, 6. Counterfeits and rival religions.
All right, part 1, defining the miraculous.
Let's start with a baseline of what the miraculous actually means within the Christian worldview, which is Dr. Spiegel's primary case study here. He points out that the entire Christian faith basically hinges on one ultimate miracle, the claim that Jesus was dead, buried, and rose on the third day. Naturalists, of course, fundamentally challenge this, but to be orthodox, a Christian literally must affirm that miracles are real, historical events.
And it's not just that one event. Look across the biblical texts. Miracles are absolutely foundational. From parting the Red Sea to free the Israelites, all the way to Jesus turning water into wine. These are presented as literal, special, divine acts. Which prompts a really interesting question. How does philosophy actually categorize these different kinds of divine interventions?
That takes us to part 2, contingency versus violation. Because not all miracles are categorized the same way by philosophers. We need to distinguish between the two main types scholars identify, and this brilliantly illustrates the nuance. A miracle can be an unbelievable alignment of completely normal events, or it can be an explicit break in the laws of physics. Philosophically speaking, they are very different things.
Okay, picture this guy, Bill. He drops his job application in the mail, but it slips through a crack onto the ground. Just then, a gust of wind blows it into the bed of a passing pickup truck. That truck just happens to drive downtown, right past the bank where Bill applied. Another gust of wind blows the envelope out, right onto the sidewalk, exactly as the bank president's daughter is walking by. She sees the name, hands it to her parent, and boom, Bill gets the job. Now, no laws of nature were broken here. Wind blows paper around every day, right? But the sequence is miraculously unlikely. That is what we call a contingency miracle.
On the flip side, we have violation miracles. This is the impossible stuff. Someone falling 10 stories onto solid asphalt and just walking away unhurt, or a person blind from birth who suddenly gains eyesight. These appear to flat-out contradict the laws of nature, and it's this specific category that brings us face-to-face with the ultimate skeptic. Which brings us to part 3, Hume's hard objection. Enter David Hume. In his inquiry concerning human understanding, Hume laid out one of the most famous and, frankly, formidable philosophical cases against miracles in history. Scholars call this the hard interpretation of Hume. His logic is pretty straightforward. By definition, a miracle violates a law of nature, but laws of nature are called laws precisely because they have zero exceptions. They are unalterably uniform. Therefore, a miracle simply cannot happen. Case closed, right? Well, actually, scratch that. Dr. Spiegel catches a massive logical flaw here. It's a completely circular argument. Think about it. Saying laws of nature are unalterably uniform is literally just another way of saying miracles cannot occur. Hume's premise just assumes the exact conclusion he's trying to prove.
Let's look at part 4, Hume's soft objection.
Because of that circular flaw, most scholars actually point to Hume's soft or epistemological argument, which is honestly a lot tougher to crack. Let's walk through it step by step. Hume argues that a miracle is, by definition, rare. Natural laws describe what is regular. Because the regular is commonplace, there will always be more evidence for the regular than the rare. And since a wise person always bases their beliefs on the greater evidence, a wise person should never ever believe a miracle claim. He's saying, hey, miracles might theoretically be possible, but they are never believable.
Moving to part 5, probability versus evidence. So how does Dr. Spiegel counter this step-by-step logic? It comes down to separating mathematical probability from tangible evidence. Think about playing Yahtzee. The probability of rolling 5 sixes in one single roll is about 8,000 to 1. It is exceedingly rare. Yet, if you play enough Yahtzees, you're going to see it happen. And when you do, you believe it. Why? Because you're literally witnessing the evidence. This exposes a huge blind spot for Hume. He relies way too heavily on abstract probabilities rather than actual observable evidence.
I mean, if we strictly applied Hume's rule that it's always irrational to believe the highly improbable, we would have to throw out established history. Take Joe DiMaggio's insane 56-game hitting streak in baseball, or the incredibly coordinated terrorist attacks on 9/11. Were those events exceedingly improbable? Absolutely. But we believe they happened because there's overwhelming, undeniable evidence.
Spiegel also tackles Hume's secondary claims. Like Hume says miracles are only reported by the ignorant, but that totally ignores highly educated witnesses, from the Apostle Paul back in the day to contemporary physicians right now. Scholar Craig Keener even published this massive 2-volume academic text documenting hundreds of modern miracle accounts across 5 continents. Plus, Spiegel points out a totally wild inconsistency in Hume's own writing. Elsewhere, Hume argues we can never actually know that nature is uniform, yet here he uses the uniformity of nature as his absolute rule to disprove miracles. You can't have it both ways.
Finally, Part 6, Counterfeits and Rival Religions.
Let's explore the real philosophical anomalies. What happens when miracle claims clash across different belief systems? Hume argued that because Hindus, Muslims, and Christians all claim miracles, these rival religions just cancel each other out. But Spiegel calls this a false dilemma. Some claims might just be false, sure, but it could also be the exact same God intervening in diverse contexts. For instance, there are widespread reports of Muslims having supernatural dream visions of Christ and then going out and finding Bibles the very next day.
This leads to a completely wild first-hand story Dr. Spiegel shares from a retired Baptist missionary down in the Cajun country of Louisiana. The missionary was having a lot of success, which really angered a local occult store owner. The occultist pointed to this dead, bloated dog on the side of the road. It had been bitten by a snake, rigor mortis had already set in, the whole shebang. The occultist looks at the missionary and says, "My God is more powerful than yours. I'm going to raise that dog from the dead. Come back tomorrow." The next day, the missionary comes back. And no way, that dog is sitting on the occultist's porch. It's still slightly bloated, red-eyed, looking like death warmed over, but it's very much alive. The missionary didn't even try to deny the supernatural event. Instead, he told the occultist, through satanic power, wondrous things can be done. But the difference is, my God wants to save you, and your God hates you. Weeks later, that reality sank in. The occultist actually converted to Christianity, and they celebrated by burning a 3-foot-high pile of his tarot cards and occult gear.
And that brings up a fascinating philosophical concept, counterfeit miracles. It shows us that in theology and philosophy, not all supernatural anomalies come from the same source. Just like the Pharaoh's court practitioners replicating the miracles of Moses in the Old Testament, discerning the source of the anomaly is just as important as verifying the event itself. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we've seen that while skepticism is a totally valid philosophical tool, relying purely on the probability of natural laws might actually blind us to the evidence standing right in front of us. I'll leave you with this to chew on. If mathematical probability alone isn't enough to instantly rule out the impossible, how do you personally weigh the evidence when you're confronted with the unexplainable? Thanks for exploring the philosophy of miracles with me today.